story because you guys have been both missionaries and now those that are helping to empower the local church to support missionaries. So tell us how you guys ended up here.
Well, we spent about 5 years in total on the mission field. And when we went back to Canada, we were actually quite broken, to be completely honest. Our middle daughter was not doing well, so we went through the whole gamut with her. And we actually ended up walking away from church completely from the end of 2011 to almost the end of 2019, so 8 years. And came back to the church that we had left, that was our sending church in Canada, which was very full circle and very humbling to come back to Pastor Dave and just own our stuff and to ask for forgiveness and to be so lovingly embraced to come back.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And we were very upfront with him when we came back. Like, we had been gone for so long, we really needed to just come and be refilled and ministered to. I was very angry at God for those 8 years. I honestly, went through it. But he gave us grace to just come and be filled. So we probably sat in church for about a year, just getting back into it, just soaking it in. And he actually came to us and asked us if we would take on the role of missions directors within the church, which was so humbling and really cool.
Full circle.
Totally full circle. So to go from being a missionary to then feeling like we now get to be advocates for our missionaries, it was really cool, hey?
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, it was a really neat ask. It was an honor to be asked to do it, actually, because, having been through it and felt like a bit of a failure in the experience, in some ways, in some aspects, just because of the way that we came back, and it was, we felt so disjointed from life, and it was really hard to reintegrate back into society and into normal life and to rebuild our lives, because we'd given up everything that we ever knew. We'd sold everything or given away everything that we had. And so we had to literally rebuild our lives from scratch. And so it was difficult to get back into that. But just to be asked to represent something that still was a love in our heart, that was something really important to us, really special to us, that was an honor. Yeah. And it was like God saying, I'm not done with you. I've got things for you to do. I've got work for you to do. And it was a really cool thing to experience.
Yeah.
Did you have any hesitancy to jump back into it, since you kind of came from after going through the whole missions experience? Because sometimes people have a very romanticized view of missions, but then having gone through it and then having survived it, did you have any are we sure we want to do this, or were you ready to go?
I think we jumped in with both feet,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, we
totally
did.
Ready to go.
It was an instant commitment, really.
Yeah.
It was just like, I'm a bit taken aback and blown away that you'd even
Honored.
ask.
Yeah.
And we just said, yeah, God, this has got to be you asking, because this seems so completely turned around. It felt like a closing of a 360-degree circle that needed to be shut up again. It needed to be closed. It needed to be encircled and finished. And that just completed it. It was awesome. Yeah.
And I think it's left us in a really cool role, having been on the mission field and knowing what is needed and what life is like on the field, and then now being back to be an advocate. I really feel like an advocate for our missionaries. I like to ask some of the bigger questions, money questions that people don't want to sometimes talk about, because there's a cost to being on the field, and you need somebody that understands that can be pushing on the home front side for that. So I think it's really cool to be in this position to kind of have a little bit of a behind the scenes understanding of, you might not be asking, but I think that maybe you need this. Yeah. So to go in and be the voice for our missionaries, it's kind of neat.
Yeah, it's really good. We were able to go back and forth and to kind of advocate for ourselves when we were on the mission field. So we were able to go back into Canada and we were able to raise money before we even left. So there are those on the field that can't even do that for themselves. They don't have the opportunity. And because of limited resources and so on. So, we feel how important it is for missionaries to be well funded.
Yeah.
And how important that is that they get what they need to do their job, because they're doing the job that a lot of people don't want to do. And there's a lot of people out there that don't want to do it, but they're willing to send finances so that it can be completed, so that God can do what he needs to do. And so we understand that.
Yep.
We get that.
So what would be your message then to churches that have missionaries that maybe don't? I mean, everybody knows missionaries need money, but a lot of times it's kind of like, how do we do that, or what else do they need? Is it something other than financial support that we need? What would you say to local churches, like, here's how you can be a support to your missionaries financially and also spiritually to help protect, what do local churches need to do for their mission?
Yeah. I think the first thing they need to do is not take for granted that they have everything that they need. And they're not on holiday, right? So obviously a prayer covering is first and foremost. It's more important than finances, truly, in every aspect. But finances are also important. So don't take for granted that they already have everything you need. And why do they have to live with the bare minimum? Like if you only need $1,000 a month to survive, you're only going to get $1,000 a month. What about date night? What about taking your kids on a holiday? Like, what about some of those extra things? So what I would say to churches is, you know what, you can't outgive God, so go over and above. If God is asking you to give 100, maybe give 110. Just cut. So I would say err on the side of generosity always. And ask what they need.
Yeah, the prayer is utmost important, and checking in with them,
Yeah.
keeping in touch with them.
Yeah.
Keeping the bridge or the communication bridge open and running, so that it's not, they're busy sometimes over here, the missionaries are busy, and it's our responsibility to check in on them, not just the other way around.
Yeah.
So the information can go both ways. It's communication.
Yeah.
Everything can be resolved in communication, but communication has to happen. So.
And how important is it for local churches, for each church to have, like, do you have to be a church that feels like you have a call on missions, or does every local church need to be involved? Because some churches feel like, we're part of an organization and our organization supports missionaries. As a local church, we don't have to. What are your thoughts on churches and missions? Is it required for churches to have missionaries?
Yeah, I do think so, because we're all called to go and share the gospel. We're all called to be witnesses, and some of us are goers and some of us are senders, but we're all in this together. So I don't think that there should ever be a select church that we're mission focused. No, we're not missions focused. No, we can all
contribute. We can all contribute to the effort, whether it be in finances or in going.
Yeah.
So if you're somebody at home that's kind of been thinking, well, maybe I'm supposed to be on the mission field, I'm not sure, what advice would you give somebody who feels like, as a newbie, I think I'm called to missions? What should they do?
They should pray. They should pray, and just know that God is not relenting on His ask.
Yeah.
And just know that it's not just them thinking that this is a boyhood or girlhood dream that I've had all my life, and I just got to do it. Just ask God, is this what you want for me? Is it something that you're calling me to? When we first entered the mission field, it was actually Kathy was given a vision, and it was a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was revealed in a couple of seconds. So God can do that. He can just answer it just like that. And it turns out that when we started talking about it after getting that call, both of us...
we were already in Africa, actually, when we started talking about it.
And we both realized that we both wanted this out of our childhood.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Like, and not even having discussed that before this happened, but it was something we both grew up with inside of us. That's the amazing thing, that God can, he started early in our lives and He fulfilled it. So even though it ended the way that it did, there was purpose in it. God was in it. He had so much that He taught us, showed us, and that we were part of. And it was important stuff. And now looking back on it, kingdom work got done. Yeah. Things got accomplished. And just whatever you don't know what the call is or how it's going to turn out. It may not be perfect. It may not be just idyllic. But if you're called, you're called. God's got a purpose, whether or not there's disobedience in it or obedience in it, full obedience or partial, wherever that looks like. It's not going to be perfect, but God's in it. If He's calling you, He's in it, and He'll be with you and He'll sustain you. He'll look after you. He did, 100%.
Every time.
Even when we came back, and He looked after us, our finances. He's blessed us with a business today, and He's good. God is good all of the time, 100%. You can rely on Him.
And what advice would you have then to missionaries who are in the field, who maybe haven't experienced what you've experienced, but what would be your advice to kind of protect your relationships, protect your walk with God, protect your family? What would you give?
That's a big one, because God is in all of it. So you can step off. You can step out of your calling. I know that because we've done it. And you can step right back into it. And there's nothing wrong with taking a pause and being like, I need help and admitting that stuff is not perfect. I think looking back on it, stuff was definitely not perfect for us. And me personally, I'll only speak for me. I did not want to admit that stuff was going off the rails because I just had in my head, this is what we're supposed to do. It's supposed to work out.
It'll
this way.
fix itself or whatever. Yeah.
You know what?
It's just,
like there are other factors into it. Our children, other people, like it's stuff. But protecting your walk with God, protecting your family, and if you need to take a step back, then you need to take a step back. But asking for help and acknowledging that's maybe part of it. There's no shame in that.
Oh. Furloughs are for a reason too, right?
Totally.
So refreshing time,
Yeah.
time to get back to, maybe some good counsel from family, from pastoral care, from your local church, whatever it might be that you might need. I mean, but certainly having family and friends and church cover you in prayer.
Yeah.
I mean, recognizing that when things may not be the way they should be, just asking for that prayer covering.
Yeah. And sometimes outside people can see that you need help when you don't even see it yourself.
Yep.
So
Absolutely
accepting
happens.
that and maybe just even if you don't agree with it or you don't want to agree with it, just taking a pause and trying to see it from that perspective, because like in our experience, our church was really just trying to help us.
Trying to help us, yeah.
And we were so immersed in our life there that we couldn't even see that it was help. So taking a minute, taking a breath, it was very important for us.
Yeah.
Now, back to present day, what are you believing God to do through your lives now? How are you believing God to impact just missions through what you guys are doing now? What's your vision for missions?
I like just in the opportunities that we've had to just spend time with our missionaries, like even over this last year, like being here in Thailand, back to where we were with Pastor Alan Terry and you
guys.
Becky and Matt. I mean, it's so cool. I truly feel like we've kind of stepped into this role of being advocates for our missionaries on the field and really nailing down what it is that they need and getting it for them. Like I've always, I shouldn't say always, I now run on this mentality of if you don't ask, you don't get. So I don't want to be pushy about it, but I certainly don't mind making the big asks. Do I ever see myself back on the mission field long term? Who knows? Who knows? Are we open to it? Absolutely.
Sure.
And I think personally, like on our personal level, I'd like to try to outgive God. It won't ever happen because he's just going to continue to give to us what we'll pass along, and we're having a lot of fun doing that. And
if he can get it through you, he'll get it to you. Yeah.
So, yeah, my biggest thing right now is advocacy for missionaries.
Yeah.
And bringing the church into that. Sorry, I'm very chatty, but
that's good.
Bringing our local church into the mission field, because there are giving churches, there are going churches, and you have got to figure out what church you're in. We have a very, very generous church at ROBC. They love to be part of missions in that regard. So giving our people the opportunity to be able to be great givers is fun.
And to be part of the kingdom.
Yeah.
From the missionary perspective on this side, well, we've got missionaries that are really good at communicating, raising support. We've got missionaries that maybe, I don't know if they're not good at it, but they're too busy. Mm-hmm. That's a huge thing, right? Out of sight, out of mind. It's really hard as a missionary to keep a focus on that side of the world, even for me. Like I totally forget. So what advice do you guys have? Like what's needed on that end? And then what can we do to make sure it happens?
I think it's important for whatever church you've got supporting you, they want to know what's going on. So you can't have a full-time job here and a full-time job relaying information. So to have a missions director out of whatever church you've got supporting you just as a touch point, right? We can be asking questions on what's going on, what do you need, newsletters or whatever, and they can pass that along to the church. Do you have anything that you want to add to that? Because I think it's just the touch point. Instead of having to talk to 10 or 15 different people, if you have one person that you can go back to and they can share the message. And then just once or twice a year, letting them see your face or hear your voice.
I think just remember that there are people in your church or whatever your representation is in your country that want to help. Mm-hmm. They want to be part of what you're doing. They really want to be part of it. They need to be asked, perhaps.
Yeah.
But they want to. There's plenty of people out there that want to be part of what's going on out in the world. and because they know that the fruit means something in the kingdom, and they know that they don't necessarily get to be part of something that seems substantial in their own lives and something that seems to be life-changing, but they want to be part of something like that. And this is an extension of themselves, really. If they get involved in missions, it can be an extension of themselves, and they just need to be asked that question, like, will you help? Mm-hmm. And so for those that aren't able to do that, I think, well, I'd love for them to even, reach out to us even, and maybe we can help at the other end, perhaps. That's something that's
kind of our job, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of whether they're in our church or not, we can call on their church. If the local church, if the missionaries' local church does not have an advocate for them, I would encourage that church to get an advocate for them, somebody that can keep in touch with them. If the pastor or the associate, whatever, the different levels of the staff don't have that time to dedicate to that, I mean, we're not a paid position.
Right.
Yeah.
We can, that can be easily created, and yet it's vital because we know what goes on at this end, and so whether they've got missions experience or not, they can still have a relationship with the people in the field, and keep that dialogue open, and keep that, what are your needs? What's going on? How can we help? Just ask those questions. Yeah.
One of the things that we see is for the ministry to grow effectively, for us to take on more nations, we need more missionaries, right? And so we're always recruiting. And that's one thing that's a bit of a challenge, because here comes Al. he's going to invite all of our people, right? And but I think all of our missionaries feel like that a little bit. Like it's hard to ask, right? For those are huge things. Those are huge asks. And so how would you encourage us as missionaries to go about that idea of bringing more people on board, bringing more funding on board, bringing more prayer support on board?
I think that's going to come down to good advocacy in the church too, because finding the right person in the church, asking the local pastors who has the heart for missions in the church. Is that you, or do you want to defer to someone else on that? But having somebody that can work with the pastoral staff and get some videos played in the church on the screen, and see some stuff going on in the field, so that they can relate to what's going on in the field, and or just some maybe it's a brochure or something, and just a handout.
I think there's a lot to be said too for somebody that's been here, or like actually getting some people here. So like long-term missionaries is awesome, because if you can have some career missionaries that are willing to come and dedicate some actual real solid lengths of time to come and do some great stuff, that's awesome. But if we can get some short-term mission teams together too, and even sometimes that might have to be partnering, like several different churches partnering together. And one thing that I definitely pick up is that people need to know exactly what it is that they're coming to do. Having an ambiguous, like, I don't know, we'll figure it out when we get there, people don't like that. We tried that, it didn't work. So having a short-term missions trip focused on one or two solid things, like coming to a place like this where there's a solid need and people can come and get themselves dirty and immersed in it and meet the people, and then go home and share that experience. It ignites something in people. So I think that goes a long way as well.
Absolutely. A short-term experience can lead to a greater calling that can lead into a long-term experience. I mean, I'm sure you get that from the Bible school. I know you get that from the Bible school all the time, when kids come out here and they get some good education and biblical training. They get a burden for what's going on, and they want to stay. They want to make that a career. They want to start out their Christian education that way, in a practical form. And I think it's vital to get them out just to try it at least, and that's where 7 weeks comes in, and programs like that.
You need like a 3 weeks in Asia for adults.
Honestly,
because people, it's going to be hard pressed for an adult working a job to do a 7 weeks. But I'm telling you, there are adults who want to come and ride an elephant, and they want to get their feet dirty, and they want to come and do all of the cool stuff that these young kids get to do on 7 weeks in Asia, in a condensed version that they can take for their holidays. I think that would be really cool. Just throw them in it.